Hi, I'm any new province, and is this possibly Pauper Playable? That's the question I want to answer about Seeker of the Way, one of the most exciting downshifts from Uncommon that we got with the release of Iconic Masters. Before I get into the deck tech, I just want to remind you that you can like the video or subscribe to the channel down below. I'd really appreciate it. It's a great way to let me know that you're enjoying everything, and it really encourages me to keep making great Pauper content. Seeker of the Way is a super powerful card, and it's shown up in a couple of archetypes since it was made Pauper legal. I'm going to tell you about some of the decks it's shown up in, the ones I've run into, and then I'm going to tell you about this deck and why I chose it for this week's videos. Seeker of the Way is a 2/2 for 2, but it's not just a normal bear. It has these abilities. Prowess, whenever you cast a non-creature spell, this creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn, and whenever you cast a non-creature spell, Seeker of the Way gains lifelink until end of turn. The first deck taking advantage of Seeker of the Way that I want to talk about is Methonical's take on Boros Monarch. He used Seeker of the Way and Searing Blaze in the deck that he took to a challenge not too long ago, and to pretty good results. He has some videos on it, and I'll link them in the description down below. Seeker of the Way is a good fit in Boros Monarch for a couple of reasons. You're picking up 2 mana artifacts that you replay to draw cards all the time. This is casting non-creature spells and it pumps your Seeker of the Way. The life gain probably also gives you a little bit more time to beat those ultra aggressive decks, and maybe it gives you a bit of an edge against burn as well. I think it was a really interesting thing to do, and I'm stoked Methonical did it and did well with it. I've seen Seeker of the Way pop up in Pestilence lists as well, namely the white-black ones. They need to gain extra life so that their life totals are above their opponents so that they can kill their opponents with Pestilence. It's interesting that you can also cast spells to pump Seeker of the Way and get it out of the range of your Pestilence triggers when you start dealing damage to everything. Finally, I've seen Seeker of the Way pop up in blue-white Prowess lists. There was one list that we played last week with Landstalence, and it really kicked our butt. It had main deck Guardian of the Guild Pact. I'll link it in one of those cards up there if you want to check that out. I'll link it straight to the match. This list, though, is J-Series 48s, and he used it in a Pauper challenge a couple of weeks ago. J-Series' take on Seeker of the Way really feels like combo aggro to me. We're trying to chain as many non-creature spells together in a single turn to kill our opponent as quickly as possible. I'm going to start by explaining the Prowess creatures in this deck. They're the main threat. They're the way that we want to deal damage to our opponent and win the game. We have Seeker of the Way, the 2/2 for 2 that gets +1/+1 and gains lifelink when we cast a non-creature spell. We have Elusive Spellfist, which says, whenever you cast a non-creature spell, Elusive Spellfist gets +1/+0 until end of turn and can't be blocked this turn. This is nice because when we're casting cantrips, we still get the extra damage value off of Elusive Spellfist's pump. If our opponent has a clogged up board, it doesn't really mind. It just slips right in there with its can't be blocked ability. We also have one Ingenious Scob. This gets pumped the same way that Seeker of the Way and Elusive Spellfist do every time you cast a non-creature spell, but this also has the ability Ingenious Scob gets +1/-1 until end of turn every time you pay blue. If you can keep making Ingenious Scob bigger and you've got a little bit of extra blue mana floating around, you can really turn this into a very powerful attacker. The last creature that this deck is trying to use to close out games isn't a Prowess creature, but it does deal a ton of damage. It's Delver of Secrets, so it doesn't really care about us casting those non-creature spells, but we do have a ton of them in our deck, which makes it a little bit easier to flip, and I'm sure that sometimes we'll be attacking with a 3/2 flyer on turn 2. Another reason I think this deck is skewed more towards aggro combo is the interaction package. It seems a lot more powerful when you're disrupting your opponent in the early game with it. That's why I think J-Series was trying to close out games quickly. Spellstutter Sprite says, Flash Flying. When Spellstutter Sprite enters the battlefield, counter target spell with converted mana cost X or less, where X is the number of fairies you control. I'm used to seeing Fairy Miscreants alongside Spellstutter Sprites because you can keep getting Miscreants down, get that number of fairies up, and then up the converted mana cost of spells you can counter. There's only 4 Spellstutter Sprites here, which means we'll only be able to counter spells with at most 4 converted mana cost. That's okay though, because I think a lot of the most impactful spells in Pauper cost 4 or less. Another piece of interaction we're running is Daze. Daze says you may return an island you control to its owner's hand rather than pay Daze's mana cost. Counter target spell unless its controller pays 1. We're running Journey to Nowhere. Journey to Nowhere says when Journey to Nowhere enters the battlefield, exile target creature. When Journey to Nowhere leaves the battlefield, return the exiled card to the battlefield under its owner's control. It's just a really great catch-all removal spell in white. We're also running Vapor Snags, which do interact with our opponent's creatures, but they can also interact with ours in interesting ways. It says return target creature to its owner's hand, its controller loses 1 life. So we can return some of our opponent's fatties, maybe make them recast them the next turn and tie up their mana, but we can also return our Spellstutter Sprites to our own hand. This lets us replay the Spellstutter Sprite and counter another spell. The card filtering and card draw we run in this deck is very reminiscent of the card filtering and card draw in the Delver decks I've run for my series Net Benefits. We have Ponder, which says, look at the top 3 cards of your library, then put them back in any order. You may shuffle your library, draw a card. And Preordain, which says, scry 2, draw a card. We also have Brainstorm, which says, draw 3 cards and put 2 cards from your hand on top of your library in any order. And of course, we have Gush, which says, you may return 2 islands you control to their owner's hand rather than pay Gush's mana cost. Draw 2 cards. We're trying to string together as many of these cards as we can in a single turn so that we can pump our prowess creatures and then attack for unimaginable amounts of damage. Hopefully we'll be gaining life off of the Seeker of the Way, we'll be getting in for unblockable damage with Elusive Spellfist, or maybe we'll be pumping the Ingenious Scab for the win. Finally, we have some interesting pump type spells for this deck. We have Distortion Strike, which says target creature gets +1/+0 until end of turn and can't be blocked this turn, and it has Rebound, which will let us cast it out of our graveyard for free on the beginning of our next upkeep. That's 2 spells cast for a single mana over a couple turns, and it can also make our Seeker of the Way unblockable a couple of times to get in for insane amounts of damage. We also have Mutagenic Growth, which is a free spell that gives any of our prowess creatures +3/+3 if we pay 2 life. Okay, let's have a look at this mana base. We're running 4 Evolving Wilds. I think these are being run over Ash Barrens so that you can get the Shuffle effect for Brainstorm and Ponder without paying 1 mana up front. We have 11 islands. We need tons of islands so that we can cast all of our 1 mana blue spells and so that we can pump our Ingenious Scabs later on in the game, and to pick up for Gushes and Days. There's a lot of reasons to have this many islands. And we also have just 2 plains, and these are for casting the 6 white spells that we have in our deck. All right, let's have a look at this sideboard. We have Journey to Nowhere, which is just another catch-all answer for creature decks. We have Dispels for when our Spell Stutter sprites or our Dazes are maybe a little bit too inefficient, or maybe we have to counter a different type of spell. We have 3 Hydroblast, just a catch-all answer for any red spell. This is going to get your Atogs, your Flings, tons of burn spells. We have Piracy Charm. This is a really flexible spell. You can choose one of these options. Target creature gains Island Walk until end of turn, target creature gets +2/-1 until end of turn, or target player discards a card. So there's a lot of stuff, and I can see a lot of matchups where bringing this in would be good. We have Echoing Truth, which says return target non-land permanent and all other permanents with the same name as that permanent to their owner's hands. I can see where this would be good maybe against tokens decks. Maybe there's a deck that plays a lot of artifacts that have the same name. We could bounce all those. We have Stormbound Geist for decks that are really great at removing creatures. This will help us keep our clock turned on in the air. We have 3 Gut Shots. This is pretty cool in this deck because it not only kills creatures with only 1 toughness, but it's also another free spell to pay life for and pump up our prowess creatures. And we have 1 more Mutagenic Growth, and we've got to be more aggressive than our opponents, or maybe we have to win with the combo finish in a pinch. And there you have it, J-Series 48's Blue-White Prowess deck. We're going to be taking this deck into a league on Tuesday night for Possibly Pauper Playable. We're there every Tuesday night playing Possibly Pauper Playable decks, so drop in at twitch.tv/anynewprovince to see live matches. Remember, you can like the video or subscribe to the channel down below. I'd really appreciate it. It's a great way to let me know that you're enjoying everything, and it really encourages me to keep making great Pauper content. This has been the deck tech for Possibly Pauper Playable this week. I hope you enjoyed it, and hopefully I'll see you on Tuesday night.